Presented by Import Minded, your trusted choice for exceptional vehicle care on South 27th, just north of 894. Tonight, it's a border battle as Milwaukee visits Minnesota.
It's Allen on the barrel. That is going to be a base hit, and they're going to wave Vaughn. Here comes the throw. No throw. It's cut off.
We'll preview tonight's matchup on the mound. Thoughts on the lineup?
Yeah, we got a good lineup. We got guys who are going to get on base, steal bases, play good defense.
And all of the storylines heading into tonight's game.
He's pushing to get back, but we're going to make sure that he's okay because we want him for the majority of the season, not just these few games.
So let's get to it.
I mean, we have the best fans in the world.
Here's your host, Hunter Baumgardt.
Welcome in, getting you set for game one of a 3-game road series for the Brewers in Minnesota as they take on the Minnesota Twins tonight at Target Field at 6:10. Welcome in. I am Hunter Baumgardt. Excited to be with you for the next hour talking Brewers baseball, getting you everything you need to know on what has turned into a newsy day here when it comes to Brewers baseball. There were updates as far as who's going to start tonight's game for the Brewers. We'll have that for you in a moment. Also, updates on Christian Yelich. A positive update on Luis Pena, minor leaguer, and any other news of the day. We'll get you caught up on all that. We'll get you the pitching matchup as mentioned. We'll get you the lineups here in just a moment and dig into some of the numbers of the Milwaukee Brewers. We're a quarter of the way through the season already, and I kind of wanted to dig into the pitchers tonight as far as what we've seen from them so far and how impressive they have been. And specifically, Brewers come into tonight having won 11 of their last 15. So they're 11-4 in their last 15. How good has the starting pitching been during that stretch? We'll get into that as well. So happy to have you along for the ride, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, or X. If you want to give us a shout there, feel free to do so. A comment or a question, always take them there. And also on the talk and text line at 877-794-1973. If you're like, why is the pregame show starting right now? My pocket schedule says the game was starting at 7:10. Well, the Twins made the decision earlier this week to move this game up 1 hour to 6:10 because the Timberwolves and Spurs are playing later tonight, game 6 of their Western Conference playoff in the NBA. And so they wanted to make sure that they could try to, the ingress, the egress, however they want to put it, in downtown Minneapolis. And they wanted to make sure everything was as easy as possible for Minnesota sports fans tonight. So that is exactly why you have a 6:10 ball game. Now, if I look at the tip time for the Timberwolves and Spurs tonight, it is going to be a doubleheader of action for Minnesota sports fans because 8:30 is the tip time for the Timberwolves and Spurs. And so you could, conceivably, you could go and watch at 6:10 the Brewers take on the Twins, and then you could at 8:30 go and watch the Timberwolves take on the Spurs. Although if you're going to an NBA playoff game, you're probably not going to go to a baseball game beforehand. But that is possible if you're in Minnesota. But appreciate you tuning in here on this Friday night. Hopefully you have a fun weekend plan. It is absolutely gorgeous out there and going to be gorgeous tonight, tomorrow there in Minneapolis for baseball. You've got Coleman Crow starting for the Milwaukee Brewers tonight. And that was news that came about 3 hours ago. It had been TBA. The Brewers did not announce yesterday who the starter would be for today. We asked Pat Murphy after the game, and he said they're still deciding. Said it could be a bullpen day. Well, it's going to be Coleman Crow getting the start, and he has made one major league start. That was the magnificent outing he had in Miami, where he went 5 1/3, gave up 2 earned runs, walked 1, struck out 4. That was April 17th in Miami. And Coleman Crow is one of those young guys in that AAA staff that you have high hopes for, and you saw some of those glimpses against Miami. So excited for him to get the start. He's opposite Joe Ryan, who's coming in. He's the Twins ace, 2-3 with a 3.43 ERA, coming off an all-star year. We'll dig into those two, what we've seen from Joe Ryan so far, what maybe gives the Brewers hope tonight, and also exactly what we've seen from Coleman Crow in the minor leagues since he was last up on April 17th. But let's start how we always start, and that's with tonight's starting lineups. Let's start with the visiting Milwaukee Brewers, who come in with a record of 24-17, coming fresh off that 5-1 homestand, that series win over the San Diego Padres after sweeping the Yankees. They are playing well, and let's see how Pat Murphy's going to line up his guys tonight. Leading off in left field, Jackson Churio. Batting second at second base, Bryce Terang. Batting third and behind the plate, William Contreras. Cleanup hitter, the first baseman, Jake Bowers. Batting fifth in center field, Garrett Mitchell. Batting 6th, that's his designated hitter tonight, Andrew Vaughn. Batting 7th in right field, Sal Frelick. Batting 8th at third base, Luis Rengifo. He's hot right now, folks. He's batting over 300 in May. And the shortstop, David Hamilton, will bat 9th. So for the Brewers, it's Churio, Terang, Contreras, Bowers, Mitchell, Vaughn, Frelick, Rengifo, and Hamilton. Now for the Minnesota Twins, who come in with a record of 20-24 on the season, coming off a 9-1 victory over the Miami Marlins yesterday. They line up like this. Leading off in right field, Austin Martin. Batting second at shortstop, Brooks Lee. Batting third behind the plate, Ryan Jeffers. The cleanup hitter, the designated hitter, Josh Bell. Batting fifth at second base, Luke Keeschel. Batting sixth at first base, Cody Clemens. Batting seventh at third base, Royce Lewis. Batting eighth in center field, Ryan Kreidler. And batting ninth in left field, James Outman. For the Twins, it's Martin, Lee, Jeffers, Bell, Keeschel, Clemens, Lewis, Kreidler, and Outman. Whenever I see James Outman in a lineup, I always think how ironic it is that a guy with the last name of Outman is in a starting lineup for a Major League Baseball team. I just love that. I love the it's just, isn't it ironic, as they say, right? Who you notice is not in that Minnesota Twins lineup tonight is Byron Buxton, who was actually scratched about 2 hours before the Twins won yesterday against the Marlins. 2 hours before the game, the Twins calling it soreness in his right hip flexor. And he had been slated to start as a designated hitter yesterday and lead off. And honestly, the Brewers are catching a major break here. He has hit 15 home runs in his last 26 games. Now, I didn't do the math of how many home runs the Brewers have in their last 26 games. I'm not going to guess, but I would guess that around the last 26 games is probably around the amount of home runs that Byron Buxton has. And you look at this and you say the Brewers are catching a break here. Byron Buxton has an 899 OPS on the season overall. So they are catching a break. He's not in the lineup tonight. We'll see what they do moving forward, but Byron Buxton not in the lineup for the Twins. You will also notice that Christian Yelich is not in the lineup once again for the Milwaukee Brewers tonight. And this is just tough because he came off the IL. You finally had Churio, Vaughn, Yelly back. And you're thinking to yourself, all right, like they all weren't in the lineup though on Tuesday. Vaughn was not in the lineup on Tuesday. So all three have not been in the lineup. They were on the active. They're still on the active roster, but unfortunately, Yelich not in the lineup. The latest from Minneapolis, per Adam McCalvy and Kurt Hogue, who are there, Christian Yelich is going to take some swings this afternoon, but the Brewers don't feel urgency to make a decision today because if it's an IL move, it can be backdated 3 days. So let's say they go through today. He takes some swings. He doesn't feel too good. They say tomorrow, all right, we're going to put him back on the IL. They could backdate it. And so 3 days means the 16th. So you're back to like Wednesday. So they could be, you know how you see sometimes when the teams put a player on the injured list and they say retroactive to, well, you can do that 3 days prior to that day that you're on. So let's say they decide tomorrow, he's just not recovering how we want him to. He's already, 3 days into what would be an IL stint. Let's put him on the injured list. And if they do that tomorrow, they can backdate it 3 days, and that would be to whatever, May 13th, and then he'd be eligible to come off in 7 days after that because it's a 10-day IL stint. But he's going to take some swings. It actually popped up, and this coming from, so that was from Adam McCalvy, Kurt Hogue of the Journal Sentinel, adding that they are still giving it a couple days before making a decision on the IL. Yelich said he felt his back tighten up prior to the game on Tuesday. So this was something that actually he felt before the game. He still played, obviously. And Yelich said, quote, not great timing. But he was going to try to take some swings on the field here this evening, and we'll see how that goes. Now, when I hear that, and I go back in Hunter's memory bank here of what we experienced on Tuesday, of course, it was great because Christian Yelich was coming off the IL. When we talked to Yelly's not, and he's gotten, I feel like over his career, he's gotten better with the media. Not that he was ever mean to it, but he's just a quieter individual. You just kind of know that he keeps to himself. And so he's been like that in his career, but as the last couple of years have gone, he's really taken on that leadership role in that clubhouse. and he's been longer with his answers. I mean, quite frankly, that's the difference. He was very short. We caught him in the clubhouse Tuesday, right before he was going out to take some swings, and he was pretty short in his answers. It was pretty quick, to the point. We played it the other day on the pregame show, on Tuesday on the pregame show, and I didn't really think anything of it at the time, because it seemed like we caught him right before he was going to take swings or something, and he was had somewhere to be, and totally understand that with players, and he was nice enough to take a couple minutes for us. But thinking back, I do wonder if he was feeling something in that moment and didn't, want to, spend a whole lot of time and just kind of felt it in the moment. I don't know. Maybe then he went and took BP, because after that he did go and take BP, and maybe he felt it after that. I don't know exactly when it popped up on Tuesday, but just thinking back, and then I also saw, and I didn't really make note of it at the time because I've seen it before, but he had a pad on his back in the dugout, if I remember correctly, Tuesday during the game, late in the game. And I was kind of thinking, yeah, it just at the time, thinking back on it, I was like, oh, interesting. I took a mental screenshot of it. I went, whatever it is on what is it? Windows. I don't know. I do it all the time for a screenshot, but I can't think about what. Anyway, I did that in my mind, Control 4 or whatever. Anyway, whatever it is on your computer, because it's different if you're on Windows, if you're on Mac, if you take a screenshot. Anyway, I did that in my mind. Okay. And so that's what I went back to then tonight when I saw that it popped up before Tuesday's game. So just a couple things to note there. Otherwise, let's hear what Pat Murphy had to say yesterday, because I think this was kind of a good overview of their mentality when it comes to this soreness with Yelich. This is not new. This is something that he's dealt with in the past. We all know the back surgery, and then he was able to play most of the season last year, obviously. But this is Pat Murphy yesterday. This is not today, so I want to preface this, but this is after the game, question and answer. If you listen to Milwaukee Baseball Tonight, you heard it yesterday, but I want to play it again just because I think it gives a good idea of the way the Brewers might handle this with Christian Yelich. So take a listen.
Yeah, he felt much better today. We'll find out a lot more tomorrow, and I think tomorrow will be kind of the telling tale of whether he needs a longer break. And yeah, he feels awful. Like he just feels awful about it, because he's so responsible to this organization. He cares so much about his role and those types of things, and very unselfish. But yeah, no, he's pushing to get back. But we're gonna make sure that he's okay, because we want him for the majority of the season, not just these few games. So if we can do everything we can, even if whatever we have to do to make sure he's 100% when he comes back.
He'd had all those back issues before the surgery a couple of years ago, and then played pretty much the whole season last year. Is it any?
No, he had the same thing last year. He had the same thing last year. If you talk to his doctor, they'd tell you the same thing, that this is going to happen from time to time. Do you know anybody with back surgery that absolutely has no problems with their back? No, it's just not the way it is.
So it'll just be based on how he recovers, or how.
Yep, we'll find out a lot. Yeah, we'll find out a lot. Yeah, to keep him out 7 days, and then why not just do something else, get somebody else here for, if it's only going to be 3 games we get back. So we'll see. I'm optimistic.
There you go. That was Pat Murphy yesterday. And again, I just want to say that it was yesterday's audio, but it gives a good idea of, right? They don't want to sacrifice the long term for the short term here. They want Yelich in June, July, August, September, October, November. Yeah, let's play it in November. Well, maybe they'll have the World Series wrapped up in October by then. But, you want him for the long haul. You don't necessarily want to sacrifice that for just a couple of games here. And, he said Wednesday that he wanted to play. And so that was Wednesday. Now we're to Friday. Now he's going to take some swings. So they're clearly taking a conservative care with this. And as he's mentioned, he just must feel it just, it was tough. His talking to him when he immediately went on the IL, you could see how much it was hurting him, and not pain wise, his injury, but mentally just not being able to get out there because, he, as Pat Murphy said, he takes a lot of pride in what he means to the Brewers, what he means to this team, how productive that we know he can be. He obviously has had one huge moment already this year with that go-ahead 3-run homer against the White Sox the first opening weekend, and can't wait for more this season. But he's got to be healthy first, and we'll see what tomorrow brings. We'll see how these swings go today, and then we'll see what any long-term effects could be. But hopefully, Christian Yelich is back in the lineup coming up tomorrow, maybe, or maybe even Sunday. I think it's a win if we get him before the end of the Twins series. All right, so Coleman Crowe was called up from AAA Nashville. So the other news of the day was that Brian Fitzpatrick has been optioned. Now, I really liked what I saw from Brian Fitzpatrick, the lefty out of the bullpen, and I think this was more just like you wanted to bring up Coleman Crowe for the start, and who is kind of expendable in that bullpen, kind of the last guy in there. And Brian Fitzpatrick is probably your guy right now. In 4 games that he appeared in at the major league level, he had a 1.59 ERA. So I really liked what I saw from him. Unfortunately, he had to make room on the roster, but I believe we will see Brian Fitzpatrick back. I really do. So Coleman Crowe making the start tonight, and we'll get into Crowe's numbers here in a little while. But one of the first questions that I saw on social media was, why is Chad Patrick not starting? And look, it's a valid question. Chad Patrick has been a key member of the team for the last year plus. He was kind of in the bullpen later in the season in the playoffs last year, but he started the year in the starting rotation. So it's a guy who you've kind of expected to start. So the question becomes, what is his role? Pat Murphy really put it really well about his role pregame a couple of days ago here in Milwaukee. And I want you to take a listen. This is Pat Murphy talking about the role that he sees Chad Patrick in right now.
We know he's a multiple inning guy, but this role that he's in right now could be used on the front end for 4 innings, or on the middle of the game for 3 or 4 innings, or in that 1 inning role like it was last night. When we want to give Ashby an extra day, we're always into win tonight. But with our youth on the pitching staff, Kurt's trying to write a piece that we got the exact same team coming back. We got Woody out, we got Priester out, we got Peralta not here. So we're going with a bunch of young pitchers, and it's hard for those young pitchers to just leave them out there and go, hey, go 6, save our pen. So the days we got to rest Ashby, whatever, Patrick fits in for 1 inning, and then he can take a few days, and now he can go 3 innings, whatever. Kind of become like an Ashby role, kind of. So it's the guy you use as an opener, but is he an opener? Or do you use him for 3 hitters, or do you use him for 14 hitters?
And the other team won't know.
Won't know. So you can do some different things and have some flexibility, but you got to be disciplined to not use Ashby last night, not use DL Hall last night. You got to keep that discipline, and it's hard to do when you're trying to win the game. And they got middle of the order coming up, and they match up against this guy better than they do against Ashby, or something like that. So,
is it going to require another length guy for the front up games?
Well, we have that. We have some options.
Drawing type.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think potentially makes Chad effective in that role, where he's maybe going multiple innings, but not necessarily 80, 90 pitches?
Your vision. You watched it. You've been watching it. So that's what makes me think it, because we all been watching it. Yeah, he's good at it.
So again, that was earlier in the week talking about Chad Patrick, and I think it gives you a perfect idea of exactly the role they see him in right now. It's not a consistent starter. It's not necessarily always in the bullpen, but for now, it is a bullpen role for Chad Patrick. And this is what you can do when you have guys who can step up at the major league level, like a Logan Henderson and like a Coleman Crowe tonight, who have proven it at the major leagues, and maybe down the road, Robert Gasser, and especially when Woody and Priester come back. Like, this is what opens the door for Chad Patrick to go to this other role. And I've been saying it for weeks. I thought Chad Patrick was the odd man out in this rotation, just the way they had talked about him, just the way Chad Patrick, had performed at times. Now, he's not been awful. And when you actually look at the numbers, his starter ERA is 2.96 and his reliever ERA is 3.27. Now, he has double the amount of innings as a starter, and which is interesting. So he has a 2.96 ERA as a starter this year, but a 3.27 ERA as a reliever. So something to keep in mind. However, you also look what he's done as a starter. 18 strikeouts, but 14 walks. And that has been obviously a key thing that Patrick wants to clean up. But I kind of like him in that reliever role. Pat Murphy said it the other day in a different quote that, I kind of like him there. So I would think that that's where he will be. Now, he can be a length, front of the game, middle of the game, one inning. He's kind of your Swiss Army knife, kind of like Ashby. Will he be used as much as Ashby? I don't know if anybody will ever be used as much as Ashby, but he could kind of be from the right side. Ashby's a lefty. You could kind of have that from the right side with Chad Patrick. So that is kind of how it all ties together, right? Coleman Crow getting the start for the Brewers tonight opposite Joe Ryan of the Twins. When we come back, we are going to dig a little more into what the Brewers have done in the first quarter of the season, because we're a quarter away into the 2026 season. And the Brewers starting pitching as of late has been fantastic, especially over the last 15 games. We'll give you some numbers on that, and then go down a few of the starters on what they've done specifically when it comes to the numbers, because, boy, this young pitching staff is coming into their own, and we'll talk about it coming up next. Getting you set for Brewers and Twins, game one of a 3-game series, game one of a 6-game road trip that sees them go to Minnesota, Target Field, then Chicago, Wrigley Field. This is the Baseball Pregame Show presented by Import Minded. I'm Hunter Baumgardt right here on Fox Sports 920.
ready for the game. This is the Baseball Pregame Show with Hunter Baumgardt, presented by Import Minded, your trusted choice for exceptional vehicle care on South 27th, just north of 894.
Getting you set for Brewers and Twins tonight. It's the border battle renewed. It's actually rivalry weekend throughout the entire Major League Baseball. Yeah, if you look at the scores or the schedule, I should say, for tonight, you got the Phillies and Pirates, the Battle of Pennsylvania. You got the Orioles and Nationals. You got the Reds and Guardians, the Battle of Ohio, Marlins and Rays, Battle of Florida, Yankees and Mets, Subway Series. You got the series between the Cubs and the White Sox, of course. White Sox coming into that series a game over 500. What? Go White Sox this weekend. We're all White Sox fans. Rangers and Astros, the Battle of Texas, Royals and Cardinals. Of course, that's the rivalry. Dodgers and Angels, of course, the LA series. So you've got the Battle of the Bay, Giants and A's. So you've got all the rivalries going on this weekend. A lot of them interleague, a few not. Of course, then there's the ones that are kind of left out, like the Braves and Red Sox, I guess. Blue Jays and Tigers. Yeah, you guys are close enough. You guys, here's the deal though, too. If you want to have a rivalry weekend, I get that this goes back to when interleague play was such a rarity, and you would have most of your interleague games against your, closest geographical rival in the other league, right? So you'd have obviously the Subway Series, you'd have the Chicago Series, you'd have Brewers and Twins, right? So this is what that goes back to. But now that they play every team every year, it kind of waters that down a little bit. So now I would say if you're going to do a rivalry weekend, do Brewers Cubs, do Yankees Red Sox, do, Dodgers Giants or Dodgers Padres, do the modern, or not even the modern, but just more, Phillies Mets, some of the rivalries. I mean, you could still do Mets Yankees. That's a rivalry. So you could still do that. I mean, you could still do Cubs and White Sox too. Some of those you obviously want to see, but if you're going to do, maybe you could do kind of like divisional rivalries, so to speak. And maybe a different rivalry weekend. I don't know. I'm just giving suggestions to Major League Baseball. Wanted to dive into some of the numbers here when it comes to the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, the Brewers come in tonight. They've won 11 of 15, so they're 11-4 in their last 15. That's since April 26th. And that was also their last series loss. They have not lost a series since that series against the Pittsburgh Pirates. They are 4-0-1 in their last 5 series. Twins, on the other hand, they just won a series over the Marlins. They have won 4 of 5 games, so they are coming in a little hot as well. The highlight of their year so far, just to kind of dig into who the Twins are a little bit, the highlight of their year so far was a 4-game sweep of the Tigers in April. Then they lost 7 of 8 in late April to come back down to earth. This series for the Twins is actually part of a 9-game homestand that they are smack dab in the middle of 3 series, and this is the second of 3 for the Twins. So you go to the Brewers and you say, okay, this team has won 11 of 15. What's been the key? Well, I ran some numbers and found this. The starting pitchers for the Milwaukee Brewers over their last 15 games have a 2.44 ERA. 2.44 ERA. That's really good. And even more impressive, maybe, is that 7 of the 15 starts by Brewers pitching in the last 15 games have held the opponent scoreless. So 7 of the 15, 7 times in the last 15 games, the starter for the Brewers has not allowed a run. 7 times. That's almost half. That's basically, it's close to half. Half the time in the last 15 games, the starter has went out there and hasn't even allowed a run. And only two of the 15 games has the starter allowed 4 runs. The starting pitching has been dynamite over these last 15 games, pitching to a 2.44 ERA. So then that made me say, wow, this team is really getting a lot of contributions from that starting rotation. So let's look at some of the individual numbers because we're a quarter of the way through the season. Let's take a look at how these guys have fared so far. So let's take a look at a guy like Kyle Harrison, who made the start yesterday, 5 shutout innings against the Padres. The guy has a 2.09 ERA so far this season. And Red Sox fans are just shaking their heads again because they saw what Quinn Priester did when he came from Boston into this organization last year. And now Kyle Harrison seems to be the Quinn Priester of 2026. And Harrison has not given up more than 2 earned runs in a start this year. And he's given up just 3 home runs over 38 and 2/3 innings. Now, the Brewers have given up the least amount of home runs in baseball overall, but they've given up but Kyle Harrison specifically has given up just 3 home runs over his 38 and 2/3 innings so far this year. Again, a 2.09 ERA, the lefty. Jacob Misiorowski, we all know that numbers are jumping off the page at you when it comes to Jacob Misiorowski. No doubt about that. He's got, get this, his strikeouts per 9 innings. So if you calibrate it out, okay, so you forecast it out. All right, if you take his strikeout rate for his innings so far and you cast it out to 9 innings, how many strikeouts would he have per 9 innings? Or how many strikeouts does he have per 9 innings? He's averaging just over 14 strikeouts per 9 innings. That, folks, is the best in baseball. It's the best rate in ball. Also, Dylan Cease is second on that list at 12.90. So the next guy is a full strikeout plus below Misiorowski. Misiorowski leads the major leagues in strikeouts at 80 strikeouts. Dylan Cease is second at 75. And also, Misiorowski hasn't given up an earned run in May at all over 18 1/3 innings. Guess what? Misiorowski has 29 strikeouts to just 4 walks in May. Just sensational over those 3 starts. When he faced the Nationals, and then when he faced the Yankees, and now he faced the Padres earlier this week. Let's go over to Brandon Sproat. Now, his ERA doesn't jump off the page, doesn't really register with the Harrison and the Misiorowskis who are in the low 2s. Brandon Sproat has a 5.75 ERA. However, in May through 2 starts, he has a 2.89 ERA, earned his first major league win in the series opener against the Padres on Tuesday. And he's really the only starter the Brewers have that has any explosive numbers in a bad way. Like he gave up 7 earned runs in that first start against Chicago, and 3 of his 8 games that he's pitched in so far, whether it be out of the bullpen, because he did have an opener a couple times, but 3 out of the 8 games with 4 earned runs or more that he has given up, 3 out of 8, which isn't great, almost half. That's why he has that ERA of 5.75. But I think we're starting to see it. We're starting to see it come into focus here a little bit with Brandon Sproat and that 2.89 ERA. I know it's only 2 starts, but a 2.89 ERA in May through 2 starts. That looks pretty nice. Logan Henderson has started 3 starts for the Crew this year, or 3 games. He pitched against the Royals back in that doubleheader in April, and then 2 starts since coming back up here in May. His last 2, he's went 6 innings and he's went 5 innings, and he's given up 2 earned runs in all 3 starts. So no matter how long he's went, he's given up 2 earned runs, which is very good. What you love to see from him, 16 strikeouts to 2 walks over 3 starts. So you compare that, and I know we talked about Chad Patrick previously in the last segment. Chad Patrick as a starter has 18 strikeouts and 14 walks. You compare that with Logan Henderson, who has 16 strikeouts and 2 walks. It's a very, very different line that those guys are looking at. So, and that could be why, and I think it's a factor why, Chad Patrick is not in the starting rotation and Logan Henderson is right now. I think that is a fair assumption. And I'm not just saying that Chad Patrick's walk number is what's leading him to not be in that starting rotation right now. But it's definitely something. It's definitely something to watch. So 14 walks for Chad Patrick, to 18 strikeouts, and Logan Henderson has 16 Ks and just 2 walks. So that could be a factor definitely in what the Brewers are doing with adding him to that starting spot and Chad Patrick out for the time being. The starting staff as a whole. So let's take a look at some numbers for the starting pitching staff for the Brewers as a whole. They're tied. First of all, they're 4th. They have the 4th best starter ERA in baseball. They're only behind the Braves, Rays, and Yankees, who have been some of the best teams in ball so far this year. Brewers have a 3.27 ERA for their starters. The top is the Braves at 2.96. That is sensational. They also have the second least amount of home runs given up as a starting staff. I mentioned that the Brewers have given up the least amount of home runs in ball as a staff as a whole, Brewers pitchers. But if you just hone in on the starting staff, they've given up the second least amount of home runs in ball. They're also tied for the seventh least amount of walks. So they are one of the better teams in not walking batters as well. So those are some numbers from the starters, and I wanted to just check in with them, right? Check in with some of those numbers, check in with where they are, because, boy, it's impressive. And Harrison and Mizorowski have been doing it from the jump. Sprout seems to be turning the corner a little bit. Adam McCalvey of MLB.com reporting this afternoon that it sounds like the Brewers want to give their starters an extra day of rest this time around. So Sprout would be able to go on Sunday, but it sounds like he may go Monday, which would then put Sprout on Monday, Mizorowski on Tuesday, Harrison on Wednesday for that Cubs series. So those would be your three starters for the Cubs series. Otherwise, if Sprout started Sunday, you'd be going with, maybe a Coleman Crowe again. No. If you went Sprout on Sunday, Coleman Crowe wouldn't go on Monday. So you would have, maybe a Chad Patrick or a bullpen day. And I think instead of that, they want to go, all right, let's have three of our established starters go in that Cubs series. Brandon Sprout, the opener, Jacob Mizorowski, day 2, Kyle Harrison in day 3. It looks like that's how they're lining up against the Cubs at Wrigley Field next week. By the way, that'll be my next pregame show Monday night, 6:40 start time between the Brewers and the Cubs at Wrigley. I'll be on the air at 5:30 here on Fox Sports 920. All right, let's get to a couple of comments here coming in on YouTube. First, Kevin says, hey, so pumped to see Crowe again. Me too. As I mentioned, Coleman Crowe was great in his first time out, 5 1/3, gave up 2 earned runs against the Miami Marlins back on April 17th. That was when some bad storms were rolling through the area. Much nicer night tonight. But yeah, Kevin, me and you both, we'll get to some check in on how Coleman Crowe's been doing in the minors here in the next segment. Lex says, great night for baseball. It'll be a while before the Red Sox trade with the Brewers again. Yeah, I agree. Wow. The Brewers seem to do it again. And Drowan has been sensational out of the bullpen. Shane Drowan, who was in that Caleb Durbin deal, 1.93 ERA as a reliever in 6 games. So Drowan has come out of the pen in 6 games this year as a 1.93 ERA. That guy has 13 strikeouts to just 2 walks. So, man, again, it just is astonishing that they continue. It's not astonishing because we know the Brewers front office is one of the best in ball, but they just keep doing it. Caleb Durbin hasn't gotten any better either in Boston. And I feel for the guy because he was in a great spot here. And I got to think the change of scenery is maybe hurting. We've seen change of sceneries help other players before. This might be hurting. Caleb Durbin, a 172 batting average right now through 134 at-bats there. And you just don't love that for him. The poor guy. 41 games. He's played basically all the games for Boston, and he's hit 172 with 1 homer, driven in 14. He has 11 walks, 23 strikeouts. He stole 4 bases, but 172 batting average for Caleb Durbin. And he's not a home run hitter, as we know, so that average has to be up. Now, last year, he hit 256. So obviously, this is a significant, downgrade for Caleb Durbin so far. Let me see here. Dobler says if Rengifo can maintain a 250 average and replace Ortiz with Pratt, the bottom of the lineup will perform lots better. Yeah, if Rengifo starts hitting, that is a significant development, and he has started hitting. I mean, he's hitting over 300 in May, as I mentioned. If he continues to do that and kind of does what we expected him to. I mean, he wasn't going to be jumping off the page. If he can be close to what Caleb Durbin did last year, I think you're going to be very happy with Luis Rengifo over there at third base. That average still sits at around 220 right now. But if he keeps this up, that can go upwards quickly. So, yeah. And then the shortstop position, we all know, what Joey Ortiz is on the offensive side. I always said the leash was kind of Memorial Day. We'll see if that becomes a leash, for the Brewers organization there at all, or when that time might come. Appreciate all of the comments coming in, whether it be on YouTube or the talk and text line as well at 877-794-1973. We're going to take a break. When we come back, We'll dig into what Coleman Crow has done in the minors so far because he's going to be taking the mound pretty soon. Half hour away from Brewers and Twins at Target Field. And again, if you're like, why is the pregame show on now? This game was moved up from 7:10 to 6:10 due to the Timberwolves and Spurs playing their playoff game in Minneapolis, game 6 of their playoff series at 8:30 tonight in Minneapolis. So they moved this game from 7:10 to 6:10. So we moved our pregame show from 6 until 5 o'clock. When we come back, we'll dig into Coleman Crow. Also give you a look at who Joe Ryan has been so far this year for the Minnesota Twins. He goes for the Twins. We'll give you the lineups one more time and give you some fast facts to make you a little smarter before you watch the Brewers take on the Twins at Target Field. This is the Baseball Pregame Show presented by Import Minded, your trusted choice for exceptional vehicle care on South 27th, just north of 894. We'll be right back. I'm Hunter Baumgardt on Fox Sports 920.
the Baseball Pregame Show on Fox Sports 920. Presented by Import Minded, your trusted choice for exceptional vehicle care on South 27th, just north of 894. Here's your host, Hunter Baumgardt.
Brewers and Twins picking up a weekend rivalry border battle series in Minnesota. 6:10 first pitch. We're about 25 minutes away from Joe Ryan throwing that first pitch at Target Field in Minneapolis. I'll actually be there tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Going to go as a fan and looking forward to experiencing Target Field for the first time. Never have been there. I've seen the outside of it. I've been outside of it, walked around it a little bit, but I've never been inside. So I'm looking forward to, it's still outside, but inside the ballpark. You know what I'm saying? So really looking forward to that coming up tomorrow. But they have a 3-game series. So tonight it's Coleman Crow on the mound for the Milwaukee Brewers. And you'll remember that name because he made one start in April and it was memorable. 5 1/3, 2 earned runs given up, 1 walk, 4 Ks, 4 hits. It wasn't like he was like Mizrowski or anything, but he was really good and it was fun to watch him pitch. And the curveball is nasty. So make sure to be watching that coming up tonight. Watch for that. Since being in the majors, he went back to AAA Nashville. He's 3 games since then. And his first one back in Nashville was not very good. He threw 3 2/3 and gave up 8 earned runs in that one. But then he's really settled in nicely after that. April 30th, he had a start of 5 2/3, gave up nothing, no earned runs. And then on May 7th was his last start, 5 2/3, gave up only 1 earned run. So he's been really good his last 2 starts in Nashville. And now he's coming up to make the start against the Twins tonight for the Milwaukee Brewers. Now on the other side, righty Joe Ryan gets the start for the Twins. He was their all-star last year, 2-3 with a 3.43 ERA so far this year. Last time out, he went 6 innings, allowed just 1 earned run at Cleveland. So that was very, very good. Now, the weird thing, the kind of the quirky thing about him was back on May 3rd, he actually left after pitching just 1/3 of an inning because he had elbow soreness. And whenever a pitcher has elbow soreness, you get kind of scared, right? Well, it turned out to be nothing really. And he came out, pitched his last start, didn't miss any time, and threw 6 innings of 1-run ball. So he seems to be okay, but just a little bit of a scare there in the Twins fans because he's the guy, the Twins are relying on. He's their number one. So that was interesting to see. But, something that a couple things that I took away from Ryan's stats when I was looking at it. In April, he had a 4.36 ERA. So this guy is gettable as much as he was an all-star last year and has the stuff, no doubt about it. He's got a 4.36, or he had a 4.36 ERA during his April starts. He also hasn't faced many great opponents. You look at the opponents he has faced and the lineups he has faced, and it's nothing really jumps off the page. Cleveland, Detroit, Kansas City, the Mets. I mean, they have good players, but they haven't put it together. The Reds, Baltimore, and then also Toronto. So Toronto also has a talented lineup, but they've been beat up at times. He's faced them twice, but Cincinnati's probably the best lineup out of those. And he went 6 innings of 1-run ball against Cincinnati as well. So he's a very good pitcher, no doubt about it. I just think it's interesting to look at the opponents he's faced and also that April ERA and you say, all right, Brewers could do something with him tonight. Obviously, you'd love to have Christian Yelich in the lineup again, with the lefty bat against him, but unfortunately not. If you missed the start of the program, Christian Yelich not in the lineup again tonight. They are going to have him take some swings before the game. We'll see how that goes. And then they are not deciding to put him on the IL yet, still dealing with that back soreness that popped up just before the game on Tuesday. So not great timing, as Christian Yelich put it to reporters this afternoon, but it is what it is. By the way, Joe Ryan has made 4 appearances against Milwaukee in his career. He's 1-1 with a 3.18 ERA. He went 1-1 against Milwaukee last season. So that is the kind of the what you need to know about Joe Ryan. Let's get you the starting lineups one more time before we get you out of here in case you missed them to begin the show. Let's start with the Milwaukee Brewers, who come in with a record of 24-17, coming off that series win over San Diego and that 5-1 homestand. Let's rock, let's roll. And so the Milwaukee Brewers will line up like this, leading off in left field, Jackson Chourio. Batting second, At second base, Bryce Terang. Batting third behind the plate, William Contreras. Cleanup hitter, the first baseman, Jake Bowers. Batting fifth in center field, Garrett Mitchell. Batting sixth as the designated hitter is Andrew Vaughn. Batting seventh in right field, Sal Frelick. Batting eighth at third base, Luis Rengifo. And batting ninth at shortstop is David Hamilton. For the Brewers, it's Churio, Terang, Contreras, Bowers, Mitchell, Vaughn, Frelick, Rengifo, and Hamilton. Even without Yelich, you love to see Churio and Vaughn in there. Brewers are 6-2 with Churio and Vaughn back on the active roster. Not a coincidence, folks. Not a coincidence. Let's look at the lineup for the Minnesota Twins, who come in 20-24. They won 4 of 5. They took a series finale, a rubber match against the Miami Marlins yesterday by a 9-1 final score. This is their lineup. Leading off in right field is Austin Martin. Batting second at shortstop, Brooks Lee. Batting third, the guy behind the plate, Ryan Jeffers. Batting fourth, the designated hitter, Josh Bell. Batting fifth at second base, Luke Keeschel. Batting sixth at first base, Cody Clemens. Batting seventh at third base, Royce Lewis. Batting eighth in center field, Ryan Kreidler. And batting ninth in left field, James Outman. For the Twins, it's Martin, Lee, Jeffers, Bell, Keeschel, Clemens, Lewis, Kreidler, and Outman. Notable, Byron Buxton not in that lineup. He was scratched before the game yesterday, dealing with some soreness in his right hip flexor. And the Brewers are catching a break with this one. He's hit 15 home runs in his last 26 games, and on the season, he has an 8.990 OPS. It's been really good. Brewers are catching a break, not seeing him tonight. We'll see about the rest of the weekend. 6:10 first pitch between the Brewers and the Twins. Wanted to also update you on Luis Pena, who you'll recall minor leaguer and with the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers, and he passed out in the dugout. But he has been clear. He passed out back a few weeks ago, and that was as a member of of course, he's in the dugout with the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers, and he was taken to the hospital that night and everything. And we got an update on him this afternoon, and it's a good update. He was cleared to resume baseball activities earlier this week, and he's begun a progression in Arizona that put him in his first ACL Brewers game as early as next weekend. He's been placed on the 7-day IL at Wisconsin, which will allow him to begin a minor league rehab assignment with the ACL Brewers once he is game ready. So he is going to play with the Arizona Complex League Brewers, and then he'll come back to Wisconsin. But just a scary moment there. Whenever, obviously, anyone passes out, it's scary. And he's kind of been working his way back, and great to see that he's been cleared to resume baseball activities. Also, I mentioned that Coleman Crowe was called up. Brian Fitzpatrick, bullpen arm, sent down. Also, Akil Baddoo is going to be initiating a rehab assignment. He's kind of been the forgotten guy in that outfield, but the Brewers did indeed sign him over this offseason and probably thought he could be a kind of a veteran factor. He had been throughout his career in Detroit, but maybe he factors in, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he takes a guy like Blake Perkins' spot on the lineup. Maybe he does, or in the on the roster. Maybe he doesn't. I'm not sure. I don't think he's necessarily an everyday guy, but a bench guy possibly once he gets back. That projection is possibly like a early June return for Akil Baddoo. All right, a couple of things to make you a little smarter as you watch tonight's ball game. Did you know since 2022, the Brewers have the best interleague record in ball, 116-65. They're also 14-7 against AL opponents so far this year. The Brewers have used 42 different lineups this year. Tonight's the 42nd game. They've used 42 different lineups. How about that? MLB leaders in runs per game. The Brewers offense is third in baseball in runs per game. And I think at times we have said, boy, the offense, just need the offense to get going. And at times it's been true, but it all evens out to having the third best runs per game. They also have the fourth best run differential as well at plus 60. They're the best with average with runners in scoring position. So it is sensational. Team ERA, Brewers are third as well. So you have what I talked about with the starting pitchers. You have the team ERA, third in baseball. You're good with runners in scoring position. You're third best in runs per game. That's what leads you to 24-17, man. It's really, really good. Man, oh, man. All right, Brewers and Twins, have a great weekend, okay? Thanks so much for listening all week long. Appreciate the comments as well all week long here. And Lex says, it's been a few years, but I like Target Field. Great skyline views from the third base side. That's fantastic. So if you're heading over to Minnesota, enjoy. I'll be there tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Have a great weekend. I'll be back with you 5:30 on Monday night before the Brewers take on the Cubs. It'll be the baseball pregame show as they'll renew their rivalry there. This has been the Baseball Pregame Show. I'm Hunter Baumgardt. We're presented by Import Minded right here on Fox Sports 920.